What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Gsluke here for our DFS live stream for this week's Zurich Classic. Just got off the golf course myself, was playing some golf with my brother and a few buddies. Ended up having a pretty decent round, but now ready to talk about the professionals and what we expect in this team play format. So just one thing to say right off the bat is we're going to be talking a lot more about narrative this week and how players gel just from a personality standpoint, a lot more than the stats. It's just one of those weeks where really we kind of got to throw the numbers aside. And while it's nice to try and hunker down on numbers, this isn't one of those weeks. So just want to go ahead and set the tone right away because this is certainly going to be a little bit different than most of these videos. So let's start off with a review of the weather, and you'll see here for Thursday, relatively benign conditions, about 8 to 10 miles an hour of sustained winds for much of the day. And then in terms of the gusts, actually a little bit higher gusts in the morning. I would assume there's some type of a cell coming through, but of course there's a lot of variance with that. Might not end up hitting at that point of the day. But throughout the rest of the day, most of that morning wave, starting right around 9, 10 a.m., I'm not going to be impacted too much. And again, they're playing best ball tomorrow. So you're going to see some nuclear low scores no matter when these guys are teeing off. And with the soft conditions in the morning, a little bit more receptive greens, I would still expect those guys to go low. So not really a wave advantage there for Thursday. Now on Friday, much of the same, right? Just 5 to 10 miles an hour of sustained winds. And then randomly from 9 to 10 a.m., it does get upwards of 20 to 21 miles an hour gusts, which, like I said before, there's a lot of variance, right? This is now about a day and a half apart from now until here at Friday morning. So a lot could change. So not anything I'm going to be tweaking for, right? Because it's an hour or two window there on Friday. And then here on Thursday, you're not going to have people teeing off till right around 7:45 or even 8 a.m., depending on when they actually end up starting in this event. So it's going to be an hour, maybe 2 hours of slightly higher wind gusts than the rest of the day. So, and again, that's the morning wave on Thursday and the morning wave on Friday that would be affected by that type of thing. So in terms of a weather, let's say split, nothing to look at there. So not really having to include that with our analysis. I can just hunker down on the plays that we like the most. We'll catch up on chat. Looks like Nick is down there. Nick says, attending my first live golf event this week. Zurich is 15 minutes away from my house. Any advice? Great question, Nick. I do go to a lot of events down in Florida, and I'll say you want to walk backwards. So you'll probably have heard this from time to time, but if you try to follow like the headliner group, like say a Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, whoever they're playing with, you're going to have a hard time really getting that first row seat. Let's say you're going to end up having, second row seats. You're going to be chasing a group for the entire day. And unless you're a super fan of like somebody like a Jordan Spieth or, Colin Morikawa, that type of thing, I wouldn't recommend doing that. What I would recommend doing is start on one of the nines, go to 18 or go to hole number 9 and just start walking backwards. So you can pretty much go at your own pace, kind of saunter along and just catch all the groups as they're coming by. And of course, you kind of want to walk along the golf course to be able to see all of the golf holes. But if you do that, you're going to see a ton of the field. And of course, if there's a group that you really like or you want to end up following for a few holes, just maybe stop, follow them for that hole, maybe the next hole, that type of thing, and then continue walking on, just catching all the groups. That's what I do, particularly at some of these larger field events. When I was at the Players Championship and there were, 10 to 20,000 people, I didn't want to be in the super groups, like with Bryson DeChambeau, where it was 2 to 3 people deep. I'm not a really tall guy to begin with, so I have a hard time seeing over people. So that's what I would recommend, Nick. And of course, like I said, if there's a group that you really want to follow, just maybe do it in the morning, right? Try to catch them on Thursday morning or Friday morning when not a lot of people are going to be out there. Right around 10:30, 11 a.m. is when a lot of the people get into the golf tournament, and it'll just increase throughout the day. Bonderific says, hit that thumbs up, folks. Absolutely agree. Nice to see you down there, Mark. Nick Mars is super fan of whoever I have money on. So yeah, that makes sense. Usually that's what I do as well. At the Players Championship, I was following a lot of Jordan Spieth. And Catch Me If You Can says, chase Jim Herman. You can walk with him since nobody knows who he is. Yeah, exactly. If you want to follow one of these, smaller tier type of players, first off, they might notice that you're following them and they, acknowledge you at some point during the round. I was following Mito Pereira during one of his events. Of course, absolutely love the guy, right? And I was like, nice shot, Mito. Looked over me and just kind of gave me the little, the hat tip kind of thing, right? He's like, yeah, I see you over there. You're following me. And he ended up going like some birdie streaks. So that was pretty cool. Definitely recommend if you're just a fan of anyone out there, following them for a little bit out there. And Robert says, make sure if you see Bryson, go Brooksy. Yeah, dude, if you say that at this point, I don't think he'll care. But during that 1 or 2 month stretch where he was really getting butthurt about it, you might get kicked out of a golf tournament for saying that. So pretty wild stuff there. But yeah, man, if you're watching a golf tournament in general, just enjoy the golf. Number one thing I'd say, Nick, more than anything in the world, is put the phone down. Don't worry about the leaderboard. Just watch what's in front of you. It's really easy, especially when you have money on a lot of the players, to kind of like sit there just like, oh my gosh, how are my guys doing? Blah, 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 like you would at home. I recommend just maybe putting on airplane mode and just enjoying the golf. That's really the number one thing I'd say. At least from my standpoint, that's what I try and do. All right, let's start talking about these players. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit less stat-based this week than most, just because of this format. And narrative really matters. I mean, we've seen that pairings over the years that are comfortable with each other, that trust each other, perhaps have complementary skill sets, have had a ton of success over the years, sustained success. It hasn't been just a win and then a bunch of missed cuts. It's usually, a bunch of top 10 finishes and then a win at this event. So that's why I'm worried about guys like Collin Morikawa. That's why I'm also worried about a group like Joaquin Niemann and Mito Pereira. We haven't seen them in this event before, right? And I know that they're quote unquote buddies, but at the same time, Collin Morikawa, Viktor Hovland, they've competed against each other their entire life. They haven't necessarily competed with each other. In Mito Pereira and Joaquin Niemann, I would say that's a little bit less so the case, right? They played a lot of junior golf together. Anytime that's the case, you get a really strong bond with that type of player. But who knows, they play in this type of format, right? Maybe their volatility, particularly for alternate shot, just isn't the best type of fit. So when we start to talk about these groups, you're going to see that we focus on those type of things. On the polar opposite end of that spectrum, you have guys like Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele, who literally vacation together. And one thing you all know out there is you don't vacation with people you don't love, right? Like you have to know that you're going to have a good time with them. They can't kind of be good friends with you. They can't be people that you like hanging out with sometimes. If you're going to go on full-blown vacations with somebody, you like them a lot, right? So somebody like a Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, they can obviously tolerate each other. They've been Ryder Cup teammates. We've seen them at this event before. Those are the type of relationships that have breeded success at this event over the years. It's mattered. So last year they played in this event for the first time together, ended up finishing, I believe it was 11th place. Just wanted to make sure that they haven't played together before that, but you'll see that they've had isolated success, right? Top 10 finish here for Patrick Cantlay back in 2018. And back in 2017, both of them finished in the top 14. So even when they haven't been together, they've been solid at this format. And now that they've really found a pairing they can lean into, and I mean, it's by far the strongest pairing that they've ever had, right? Both of these are top 15 players in the world. Those are the type of people I have a lot more confidence in. You can see the ownership is higher for Collin Morikawa and Viktor Hovland, which, I mean, I get it. They're both top 5 players in the world, both top 4 players in the world at that. But at the same time, we don't know how they're going to look this week. For all I know, it could be great, right? They could go out there and storm the field, but could also very well be in the opposite end of that spectrum. I'm a little bit worried about Cam Smith. I'm not so worried about Mark Leishman, believe it or not. So the reason why we're fading this group here is because of Cam Smith's form. The driver looks broken, and I mean really broken. Just look at the last round at the Masters. That continued at the RBC Heritage. He did not find that driver. It was completely lost. That's why he couldn't compete there. The guy had insanely good irons, insanely good putting at the RBC Heritage, yet still missed the cut. So there's something going on with that driver there. And I know it's only one of the 2 players, right? But Mark Leishman's not a $10,200 golfer, right? So he's not enough to make up for it. It's not like somebody like Cam Smith is playing alongside a Xander Schauffele or a Patrick Cantlay for that matter, right? There's a huge step down in competition from a lot of these elite tier players at the top. I mean, to be quite frank with you, even from somebody like a Sam Burns and a Billy Horschel to somebody like a Mark Leishman. So I'm worried about that group in general, and not worried at all about this Billy Horschel, Sam Burns group. Both of them coming in with really good form. They played well together last year, finished in the top 5. And they also, you can tell they like each other, right? Billy Horschel was talking about getting really mad on the golf course, and Sam Burns is like, oh, I'm just going to go up and give him a hug, right? And that just totally seems like something that Sam Burns would say and do. And quite frankly, it probably would calm him down, right? He'd be like, okay, I look like a complete clown out here. My partner's coming out and giving me a hug on the golf course to try and calm me down. I think it works, right? Sam Burns is kind of that aloof, kind of just like, I don't know. He's kind of like a stoner, right? It's 420 today. He kind of acts like a stoner out there in the golf course where it's like, yeah, chill out, bro. Whereas Billy Horschel's the cracked out kind of maniac out there. Every shot he hits is literally a life or death situation for Billy Horschel. So I think it works, right? You have the high and the low there on the team, and they can kind of balance each other out. Moving on here to the next group, I absolutely love Ryan Palmer and Scotty Scheffler. Talked about him extensively during the Core Picks video. Just don't understand the pricing. This should probably be the second highest price group. You could probably price them higher than that Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele group. I mean, number one player in the world, Ryan Palmer has been one of the best players in the world at this event. So just looking at his track record, 7th, 1st, missed cut in 2018, whatever. It's a volatile event. 4th place in Zurich, right? So 3 top 10 finishes. And now he's paired up with the number one player in the world. And now I know there's been a lot made of the other partners that he's had, people like Jordan Spieth, John Rahm, that type of thing. But this is the number one player in the world. It's not like it's a step down going to a Scotty Scheffler who's coming in winning how many events in a row at this point. So just like the pairing there, I think they are very underpriced, could very much be $1,000 more expensive, and I would still be willing to get to them there. I'll catch up on chat. Nick says, walking the course Thursday and Friday, got VIP tickets to the tent behind the 17th green Sunday. That's going to be fun. I don't know what hole that's on. You said 17th green. That's a perfect spot to be at, right? Because you'll be able to see them coming down 17. And then a lot of times those tents, a lot of times the structures that they have there, they'll have viewing over the other side of the railing where you can see them tee off. So I have no idea how that's oriented. I've never been to the Zurich. It's kind of on my bucket list. I want to see one of these team events in person at some point, Ryder Cup, one of these. Probably a lot more affordable for me to go to the Zurich Classic. A lot of times you can see over the other side and you can see the tee box in 18. So you might be in a really sweet spot there, Nick, to see the action coming down there on Sunday. And you also said LSU and Florida normally don't get along very well. They don't normally get along very well, but they're both swamps, right? They're both in the swamp. They're from that part of the country. It's a weird combination, right? They're kind of like opposites. Like I said, you got the really laid back Sam Burns, the really energetic Billy Horschel. But for whatever reason, they really like each other. And I'm going to ride with that because last year, that was really apparent. Like you could see that they were a really good pairing. For whatever reason, Billy Horschel looked a lot calmer than most times. Maybe it was because he was playing with a partner. It's really easy to act. I think I know why. I kind of act crazy when I'm on the golf course, right? But when I'm playing with someone else, I don't do that because your actions reflect the other player, right? When you're playing with somebody else. And Billy Horschel doesn't want to act like a clown when he's playing with his boy Sam Burns, right? Just like how if I'm playing in a golf tournament, it's a really, let's say, I don't want to say prestigious because I'm not playing in any prestigious events, but just like, higher end, fancy type of event where you don't want to act out. I'm not going to do that type of thing. So I get it. I understand it. And perhaps that's what Billy Horschel needs because he's had a ton of success at this event, not just with Sam Burns. If we take a look at his track record here, first off, he won the Zurich Classic when it was a stroke play event back in the day. He won here when it was a team play event there in 2018, a 13th place finish, of course, 4th place finish last year. Guy loves this golf course. So just a lot going for that group in general. And that's for sure. And it's a little bit weird, like you said, because they're LSU and Florida. Those SEC teams, they get a little bit feisty, that's for sure. Just don't get them talking about football, and you should be pretty good out there. Maybe a fan will stir up that type of controversy if they're trying to get under their skin. Let's move on to the 9K range. Ian Poulter and Shane Lowry, they've never played together, but they did play together on a few Ryder Cups. So there's something there. At least they have that familiarity. But of course, just a good skill set fit. You have the iron play of the ball striking from Shane Lowry. That's been out of this world of late. And of course, the putter and the around the green play with an Ian Poulter. Shane Lowry also really solid with the around the green. So you really don't have a weakness with this group. The only thing that could really hold them back is when they're playing alternate shot is if Ian Poulter is really squirrely with the iron play, which hasn't been happening of late. He's been a much better player over his last 24 measured rounds. So I'll be playing them even with quite a bit of ownership there. That was a little bit higher than I would have hoped for. When I ran my first set of ownership, I had them at 24.6%, which again, I was hoping to be closer to 18, maybe 19%, but seems like people really want to play Shane Lowry, which I understand. The guy is maybe the hottest player in the world outside of Scotty Scheffler. Sergio Garcia and Tommy Fleetwood have had a ton of success at this event in the past. I didn't think that was the case just because obviously in 2021 they didn't play together, but in 2019, little did I know they finished in second place. That was not in the memory bank, should have been. In 2018, they didn't play together, but Tommy Fleetwood had a top 5 finish. So I think there could be something there. You've seen them play together in Ryder Cups. They seem to have a pretty good chemistry going. So at $9,400, I am willing to go to these Euro groups, even more so than that Joaquin Niemann Mito, right? They're probably similar pedigree players to people like Shane Lowry, Sergio Garcia, Tommy Fleetwood at this point of their career, right? Obviously, a lot of those older players, let's be honest, they're on the decline at this point. These two players are on the ascend. At the same time, they don't have the experience, right? We haven't seen them in this format. So I'll go with the more proven commodities at this point. Even though I love my boys from Chile, right? I love Joaquin. I've been talking about him for years now here with DFS golf, whether it's been on this channel or just when I'm doing my write-ups. Used to do them in written form back in the day. Mito Pereira, I've been on the guy since he got on tour. So it's no diss against those guys. Just like those European tour guys a little bit more. Max Homa and Taylor Gooch. This I haven't placed an outright bet this week, but this is the only outright I'm considering. It's Max Homa, Taylor Gooch. I think there's a lot of value there. They're extremely high birdie percentage players, very aggressive, solid ball strikers, right? Just they can really do everything. That's the one thing about Max Homa and Taylor Gooch. They're also best of friends. They play a ton of practice rounds together. Just they're kind of overpriced, right? I mean, realistically, they're similar golfers to guys down here like Will Zalatoris at the very best. I mean, they could be like $8,800. So it's not like they're drastically mispriced. I like them here. I really have a sneaking suspicion that these two could perhaps win in this week. So they're the only outright bet that I'm looking to place right now because I like teams like a Billy Horschel, Sam Burns. I like Ryan Palmer and Scotty Scheffler. I think they have a really good shot to win this thing, but at the same time, not enough to win. I mean, to bet it, right? Their lines are like 8-1. I think it's 10-1 for Ryan Palmer and Scotty Scheffler, depending on what book you have access to. So just not really enough value for me to go out and attack. Whereas Taylor Gooch, Max Homa, there's a lot more meat on the bone there. Not a huge fan of this Bubba Watson HV3 group. HV3's had a horrible time with team play. He's missed the cut the last 4 times at this event. Bubba Watson's had quite a bit more success. They're at $9,000. The issue is the recent form. The guy's not coming in hitting the ball very well. You can see in terms of their total model rank, and I promised we wouldn't talk about the stats too much, but they're the worst ranking to price that we have on the board. You can see they're here at number 13. They're just, in terms of value compared to price, not what we're looking for, right? Another team right here that doesn't fit that type of build would be the Benny Ann and Sanjay M group, right? You can see they're number 27 there and number 25 in the pricing. That's not what we're looking for. Whereas we have groups up here, like a number, let's see, number top 5 right here. You have number 3 with Shane Lowry, Poulter. They're on the opposite end of that spectrum, right? They're number 11 in pricing, but they're number 3 in my total model rank, so they're obviously a solid play per the numbers. Again, I don't want to bog myself too much down in those because the numbers this week aren't going to tell us too much. It's just a little bit nuanced. It's a completely different ordeal than what we have with stroke play events. So using modeling, all that type of stuff could get us a little bit sidetracked, but let's keep moving on. Davis Riley, Will Zalatoris, much like a Taylor Gooch in Max Homa, extremely aggressive players, very similar skill sets, both really solid ball strikers. Davis Riley is more of the Max Homa of the group. The Taylor Gooch is more like a Will Zalatoris. And I like that type of build. I think that they're priced appropriately. They're $8,900. They're getting a fair amount of ownership. You can see how I'm at 21.5%, which for large field events, particularly for an $8,900 golfer, that's a pretty significant amount right there. But something I'm willing to get to because I like their upside. I like how aggressive they are. Could certainly go the other way really quickly, but in these large field tournaments, got to be willing to take on that risk at times. Danny Willett and Terrell Hatton have had plenty of success at this event, so looking to build on that. Certainly guys that could go out there and continue that. Terrell Hatton's just an absolute madman and best ball. Is going to make a ton of birdies. Just hopefully Danny Willett can make pars on the holes that Hatton isn't out there doing his best stuff. Because Terrell Hatton can also eject himself from tournaments extremely quickly. Just look at his Masters record. It was ugly. Even look at the RBC Heritage record. It was really ugly there as well. Benny Ann, Sanjay In, just a fade of Benny Ann. Again, he lost his tour status. He looked decent on the Korn Ferry Tour, but again, that's the minor league tour. Anyone can look good on that type of tour. Anyone can win 2 to 3 times out there. I mean, Mito Pereira, right? We love the guy, right? He's playing super good on the PGA Tour, but he won 3 events out of, I believe, like 15 starts out there. He dominated on that tour. Obviously, hasn't won on the PGA Tour yet. I'm expecting him to do that at some point. But the talent level is hugely different between the two tours. And I know, obviously, it's still a lot better than a lot of the other tours out there. Just it's still a huge step up. Let's move on to this middle of the 8K range, perhaps some of the more value picks here in this 8K range. You really see a huge talent drop-off, I would say, from this Zalatoris and Riley group. Perhaps the last man into this top tier might be a Danny Willett and Terrell Hatton group. And then there's just a huge step down in talent. I mean, then you get to Graham McDowell, Seamus Power. And I know Seamus Power has been pretty solid over the last few months. But over the last 3 to 4 events, it's kind of been in a little bit of a downstretch. I mean, Brendan Steele, Keegan Bradley, right? These aren't guys that we're talking about as our favorite plays on the slate. And I'll be playing both those groups. You can see I have both of them in my player pool. So it's not like I'm dissing them completely or anything like that. Just a huge, huge downgrade in talent. So just understand a lot of your builds, you're going to want to be trying to take 3 guys higher than here, which when we talk about the 6K range, you're going to see it's just super ugly. So building lineups this week is not going to be easy. You're going to have to be uncomfortable with some of your lineups. You're going to have to take some of these guys in the lower 8K range that aren't sexy picks, like a Graham McDowell, Seamus Power, like a Keegan Bradley and Brendan Steele, just to make lineups work. Because when you see these guys in the 6K range, I'm sure you've done a lot of digging yourself. It's really bad. There's some guys down there that you don't even have to think twice about playing. They're just dog shit plays, like complete dog shit. And we're going to make fun of them when we get down there. We're going to have some fun with the 6K range today, guys, because there's some teams down there that literally have zero shot at making the cut. Like I don't know. I don't even know how they're in the field. Like there's probably a lot of people watching this video that might be able to beat them. Like legitimately, some of the guys down low. We'll get there. We'll talk about. We'll have some fun with it. Let's talk about the Grayson Sig Sip Straka group though. They're $8,300. They're coming in with higher ownership than I would have hoped. You see, I have them there at 14.5%. But from a skill set perspective, talked about it in this sleeper picks video from today. They're right around neutral in all 4 major categories. So that's very similar to some of these groups up here in the quote unquote super team range, where Cantlay and Xander gain across the board. Same thing with the Billy Horschel and Sam Burns. You get that down here at $8,300 with a Grayson Sig and Sepp Straka. So I think there's definitely something there. Should be a relatively good skill set fit. Brendan Todd and Chris Kirk, they're a really solid pick as well. Just expect them to be a solid fit at the Zurich Classic. Especially, I talked about as a core pick, so obviously I'm, backing them quite significantly here. But with the short game, just a short game specialist group. So if you're expecting this to play as a birdie fest, more of a putting contest than it is a ball striking affair, this would certainly be a team to keep an eye out for. Henrik Stenson and Justin Rose are just busted at this point. They're well past their prime. They made Henrik Stenson the captain at this point because they know he has no chance of actually making the roster. They wouldn't name him the captain, right, if they thought he was going to make the team as a player. So that just tells you everything you need to know there. Adam Hadman Svensson, I don't know if I end up playing them just because of the ownership. People have a hard on for Adam Hadman at this point for whatever reason. The guy's decent. The guy's a good player. He's a consistent player. Don't get me wrong, but I don't understand the ownerships on this guy. The guy's coming in as chalk week in and week out. And now it's in a team play event where he's playing with a guy that was $6,300 last week. And he's $8,000 and they're still 15% owned. Like, come on. Like, he went up in price. Adam Hadman was cheaper than this last week at a stroke play event. Now he's matched up with a 6K guy and he's just as highly like that's all I'm going to say about it. He might end up in my player pool. I might end up matching the field on him, but I don't feel good about it. It's just ridiculous at this point. Again, like I said, people have a hard on for the guy for whatever reason. Martin Laird there, Robert McIntyre, $8,000. They're a high upside play. They'll probably make my player pool. Mostly Robert McIntyre is who I want here. Of course, Robert Laird. I'm sorry, not Robert Laird. Martin Laird is an extremely good ball striker. Somebody who's going to go out there, gain a ton of strokes with the approach play. Robert McIntyre, more of a putting specialist, more of a popper. Obviously, he's very solid off the tee. He's an extremely long player. With Martin Laird's lack of distance at this point of his career, he's kind of declined in that category. Perhaps the young guns distance off the tee, that power can make up for it. So that could be a group to keep an eye out for. Probably ends up in my player pool. Brant Snedeker and Keith Mitchell, I like their skill set fit. A bomber with a guy that's a little bit shorter, more of a putting specialist. That usually has boded well at this event. Charles Schwartzel and Christian Bezainhout, definitely a group to keep an eye out for. Charles looked a lot better in his last 2 events at the RBC and at the Masters. And Bezainhout is a pretty solid player. I've kind of given him some shit on here on the channel, kind of talked about how he's a consistent player, but doesn't really have that top end upside. This is a different format, right? This isn't stroke play. We've seen Charles have a lot of success at this event. Last year with Louis, almost ended up winning it. So perhaps Zane, who can get that nuclear hot putter, carry them in best ball or something like that. Cameron Tringale, that plotter with the bomber Wyndham Clark, that's an interesting matchup. I wouldn't have expected them to team up for this event, but perhaps they looked at the shots gained metrics, realized that they would be a complementary pair. And going with that at $7,900 isn't something I hate. Robert Streb and Troy Merritt aren't my favorite play. Much like an Adam Hadwin, Troy Merritt is like almost an identical player to Adam Hadwin. Like if you take a look at their long-term metrics, a lot of their shots gained approach, off the tee, putting numbers are almost the exact same. So it makes sense that they're close in price here. But for my money, I'd rather have this Robert Streb, Troy Merritt group than I would rather have this Adam Svensson, Adam Hadwin group, right? First off, the ownership difference, it's almost twice as ownership on the other group. Plus, you're dealing with two solid players here where you have Robert Streb and Troy Merritt. Whereas there's a lot of question marks about Adam Svensson, right? I mean, the guy's a $6,000 golfer for a reason. So, I mean, I don't like playing Robert Streb, Troy Merritt. So maybe that tells you just how little I like Adam Hadwin in this type of field. But yeah, it's not the worst group to go to here. Just not my favorite. Just not enough fireworks for me. I don't expect them to make enough birdies in the best ball format to really matter. Unless they go out there, gain 3 to 4 strokes apiece with the putter this week, I don't really see them being a factor. An alternate shot, just certainly not a team that scares anyone. Doug Gim and Matthias Schwab, they're high upside plays. They make a ton of birdies. I just think they're overpriced. They should be closer to $7,000. I don't have a ton of confidence they go out there and have a really solid week. So we'll have to see if they make the player pool. It's TBD as of right now. Joseph Bramlett, he's a sleeper pick, of course, with Maverick McNeely. This team is being carried by McNeely. He's somebody who, of course, is one of the better players in this field. A top 25 player in this field if you were looking at them individually. Bramlett, of course, a little bit of an anchor there, a little bit less prominent of a player than a Maverick McNeely, but long off the tee, perhaps could get them in some solid positions off the tee and alternate shot. So we'll have to see with that group. Certainly will be in the player pool. Jason Day and Jason Scrivener, the two Jasons from Australia, I'm not buying in on it. I like Jason Day. I'm rooting for the guy considering all he's been through for the last few months. But just with the health, with Jason Scrivener being a complete question mark for me at this point, haven't really been watching him on the European tour, tracking his stats or anything like that. We'll have to see. I'm, again, rooting for the guy. Hope, for his sake that he has a few good golf tournaments here, but I'm not expecting it. Kevin Kisner and Scott Brown always play well at this event. They usually show up. So even though Scott Brown has been completely MIA from the PGA Tour, has been playing on the Korn Ferry Tour for the last month or so, they could go out there and surprise. And they're only 7.1% owned, so it's not like they're chalk or anyone that you have to invest a ton of lineups into to get leverage. Alex Noren and Norlander, you guys know I'm not a huge Norlander fan, so I'm probably still going to play them because Alex Noren has been such a high upside play of late. The shots gained metrics for Norlander are horrible, whereas Noren's shots gained metrics are pretty damn solid. So that's why they're still there at number 26. I mean, if you were to separate them between the two, just look at the shots gained metrics. Noren gaining off the tee, gaining on approach, gaining around the green, and gaining with the putter. He's one of the few players in the field gaining across the board. Then, there's Norlander losing half a stroke around putter. There's losing around the green. He's losing off the tee. At least he gains with the approach play. At least he hits some good iron shots, right? We can say that about Henrik Norlander. Again, that's a group we'll have to see about. I'm not excited to play them, especially given Norlander's form. But if Norlander somehow plays good this week, he's got a damn good partner, right? You could go out there, be carried by an Alex Noren. Yes, we'll have to see. Maybe I have like 5 to 7% when it's all said and done. Do like Bo Hostler and Sahith Theegala. They have a lot of, I don't even know the word for it, I guess familiarity. They're not people that have really played together. They haven't been in a team format together before, but they've played a lot of golf collegiately and in junior golf days together. Brian Stewart and Russell Knox, we'll have to see about that pairing. I don't know. I've seen some good things about them written up this week, but I don't know if I can buy it. I really don't like Brian Stewart. The guy's the slowest player that I've seen on tour. Watching it in person is actually a little bit painful. You're sitting there for like 40 seconds, trying not to move because the golfer's sitting over the golf ball. You don't want to move, distract them or that type of thing. It's hard to stand still for 45 seconds. It's literally painful to watch him play golf. So that's why I can't play him. Yeah, I'm not even doing analysis. Don't even ask me about him. I'm not playing them. You can play him if you want to. That's fine. Just can't stand the guy. So if I put him in my lineups and I actually have to root for the guy and perhaps watch him on TV, just too painful to do. Sorry, I'm not doing it. Aaron Ryan, David Lipsky, like their upside. Of course, they're up-and-coming players on tour that I've had my eye on for quite some time. So certainly will make the player pool. Matthew Neesmith, not so much of a new name on the street, but is playing like a new name. Looks like a completely different player, given the short game has really caught up to the ball striking numbers that we've seen over the years for him. So if he can continue that type of form, I like the matchup with Taylor Moore, who's an extremely consistent player. Moore is right around a neutral player in every shots gained category, especially over the last 24 measured rounds. He started off a little bit cold on tour, wasn't necessarily his best self. Over his last 2 to 3 months, he's gotten a little bit better though. So certainly somebody that could break out here, especially alongside Matthew Neesmith, who's kind of already broken out on his own. He's kind of already asserted himself as one of these better players out here. Catch me if you can. You can't make me laugh like this. I see one of your comments down there, and you're almost having me spit out my drink. We'll catch up on chat. Nick Moore says, Lowry has been playing a ton of golf this new year. A little bit of you got to work on your wording there, Nick. You're jumbling me up here a little bit. Lowry been playing a lot of golf. This New Orleans food and drinks might derail him. We'll have to see about it. He's got a good partner, at least, right? Ian Poulter kind of needs something to happen. So maybe he'll be a little bit focused for his partner, because Poulter has been in some dreadful form. He's kind of been posting on social media talking about how bad his game is. So maybe he'll play for his partner. But yeah, I will admit, New Orleans, a very distracting place to play. I would be distracted down there. Catch me if you can. We're going to catch the comment here in a second that made me laugh. Stallings and Garnett were 11th last year, played together all the time. Garnett form too shitty right now. We'll take a look at the shots gained metrics because, yeah, like you said, from a first glance, not really somebody that I was looking to play. But if they have that familiarity, which I didn't know about that. So that's a good thing that you brought that to my attention. We'll take a look at the numbers. But yeah, I am a Bazane hater, that's for sure. Yeah, you guys know if I'm playing Bazane, who, I like to give him crap on here on the channel, it usually means he's a good play, right? I'll give him credit where it's due. He's right around an average player at everything on tour. But it's hard to really identify where he's going to be good if he's just average at everything, right? You just kind of got to hope that he plays better than average at everything in a given week. Not the most exciting guy to play. Barry Robara says, who's with me on the Brem and Hubbard team? I don't think I'm going to be there personally, but I understand it. Brem was playing some good golf of late. Robert is there with you. They could pop. So you're not alone there, Barry. That's for sure. You said you got money to spend thanks to Cantlay and Spieth last week. That is awesome. Yeah, I was on that Cantlay train. Wasn't on the Spieth train. Just, I guess as a fan, I was there. Robert says, Long and Hogue, I like down there too. We'll get to that range. I think they're a decent play. They definitely have the ball striking numbers we're looking for. Chris Palmer says, cash head-to-head. Favorite two set of guys if you had 14-2 left. So Hoagie and Smotherman. I definitely like Hoagie and Smotherman. So I know obviously during my core picks, they would be one of the main guys I'm going to. So that would leave you at $7,300, right? So if you had 14-2 left, or no, you'd still have $7,100 left. Wow, mental math, right? So you'd be looking at Doc Redman, Sam Ryder, and then you'd be looking at Alex Smalley, Hayden Buckley. I'd go to the Smalley Buckley group. I leave $100 on the table. I'm a little bit more confident in them than the others. I sure as shit wouldn't be looking at Adam Hadwin, Tyler Duncan. And yeah, I mean, Doc Redman, Sam Ryder, a little bit volatile there. So yeah, I'd be going with the Alex Smalley, Hayden Buckley group. Would not even be considering this Charlie Hoffman, Nick Wise. Just probably not the best team to go to there. So yeah, I would go to this Harry Higgs Smotherman group. You could go down to this Buckley Smalley group, or you could go down to this Barjon Home Hoagie group. I don't think you want to be taking the Sam Ryder group, right? So I would go down to one of these groups there at $7,000. The one group I would for sure have in cash would be this Smotherman Higgs group, because I think they're just such a good skill set fit. We're going to talk about them here in a second in a little bit more detail. But just from, you have the long irons with somebody like a Smotherman. You also have the short game for somebody like a Harry Higgs. That should play really well at this golf course. So those are the groups I would go with, two of those three. Couldn't really, I guess if I was going to choose one to leave out, it would be the Smalley Buckley group. I'd go to the ball strikers and Tom Hoagie and Barjon, just because that's a little bit more consistent, right? Approach plays, the most sticky stat from round to round, the most consistent from one golf tournament to the next is your ball striking. So in cash, where we're just looking to finish in the top 50%, that'd probably be the move there. Barry says, yep, I like that combo as well. Solid. That's good to know. All right, let's continue here in this range, in the 7K range. Guys, we're not going to be talking about a lot of these guys down low. So just going to show you the bottom of the 6K range. They're pretty much all no's. So we're going to really take our time here at the bottom of the 7K range, because this is where a majority of our value is going to lie. All right. And by the way, if there's any groups you want me to touch on that I skip over, just feel free to go ahead and put them down in the chat. I'll catch up on them after we go through all these players. So Joel Damon, Steven Yeager, not one of my favorite plays. They're just going to be in the player pool as a filler in that 5 to 6% range, right around what the field has for him. I like Joel Damon. I don't like Steven Yeager. I think Yeager over the last 2 to 3 months has really looked dreadful at the very best. If you take a look at his shots gained off the tee, losing over a stroke per round. So going to have to be carried by Joel Damon out there, particularly in the alternate shot format, at least with some of those distance shots. So I don't like that part of it, but Steven Yeager can get extremely hot with the putter. So we'll have to see about that. Again, they're just a high upside play. I don't love it, but they'll be in the player pool. Ben Coles and Denny McCarthy, similar story. You have the super hot putter with Denny McCarthy. Ben Coles, just average across the board. A little bit more of a short game guy. You can see gains around the green. Loses with the putter, loses on approach, loses off the tee though. So again, not all that much to look forward to with a Ben Coles. Very similar to a Steven Yeager, where if they end up getting really hot, this is where that group pops, because Denny McCarthy is going to go out there, be a solid above average player for this field. But you can already start to see where the talent level is dropping off quickly. So Grace Garnett, I know we were going to talk about him before. Let's take a look at the recent form. I shouldn't really call this recent form, I should say. These are over the last 50 measured rounds. So that's quite a large sample size. You can see off the tee, he's a slight loser. That's not so bad. The approach play has never been great. Yeah, he's very inconsistent there. Gaining around the green, gaining with the putter. To answer your question, catch me if you can, it's not really that bad, right? It's just the approach play. And Scott Stallings, over the last 2 to 3 events, the approach play has been excellent. The guy's been hitting piss missiles out there with his wedges. So I could see myself playing that actually. I kind of put the no down there real quick because, at first it was just, that was my immediate reaction. It was like well, I'm not going to play Bryce Garnett, Scott Stallings. Are you kidding me? Like, I haven't done crap, right? Other than Scott Stallings a few events ago, he looked pretty decent. But outside of that one event, he's been pretty crap for quite some time. I'm not going to put them down as a yes, but I don't hate the play. So I'm going to put it down as a blank. I'll change that to a blank. Not going to make my player pool personally, but I'd understand if you get to it. A group that you don't want to play is this Matt Wallace, Sam Horsfield group. Horsfield in better form than Matt Wallace, and that's really saying something because Horsfield hasn't done anything on the PGA Tour. He's been really solid on the European Tour, but every time he tees it up over here, whether it's in a regular field event, whether it's in a major championship where he gets a sponsorship exemption into it, he does nothing with it. So until we see anything from him stateside, I'm going to avoid him pretty much at all costs, particularly if he's playing with Matt Wallace, who arguably is probably the worst player in this field when it comes to his shots gain metrics over the last 50 measured rounds. Just look at this. It's dark red across the board. He's losing close to a stroke per round off the tee. He's losing close to 3/4 of a stroke per round on approach. He's losing around the green and losing nearly half a stroke per round with the putter. What the actual fuck happened to Matt Wallace? Like, seriously, I don't know if anyone knows what happened to him, but he went from being a really solid prospect, like somebody who was threatening winning on the European Tour week in and week out. We thought he was going to come over to the PGA Tour and be a really solid prospect. What happened? Like actually, I haven't been able to see any video from his swings or any breakdown or anything like that. Something really bad happened to his swing. That's for sure. You want to be avoiding that group at all costs. Let's just say that. Let's talk about the Smotherman Higgs group. Talked about him during the core picks video. Absolutely love the skill set fit. You got the bomber, the guy who's really good with those long irons, with the more short game specialist, Harry Higgs. Just from an alternate shot format, makes a lot of sense. They could put up a lot of birdies in aggressive players. So in best ball, as long as they're keeping the bogeys off the board, they're not making them at the same time, could be in for a really solid week. Doc Redmond, Sam Ryder, aggressive players I'm looking for. I talked about them in the value picks video. So if you're looking for the full breakdown on those two, make sure to check that out. But aggressive players that have been playing pretty decent golf of late. It's a lot more than we can say than a lot of these other groups here. Alex Smalley looked really good at Corrales. Hayden Buckley, of course, almost won the Sanderson Farms, looked really good during the fall stretch. I think a lot of people forget that, right? It was just 4 or 5 months ago, but Hayden Buckley was by far the most impressive PGA Tour rookie that we had on tour. Like, we were talking about Hayden Buckley as being like a legit player on tour. Like, we thought he was going to be a top 40, 50 player on tour pretty soon, and he kind of fell off, right? He went through a little bit of a lull. But take a look at the shots gain metrics. Still solid, still gaining on approach, still gaining off the tee, gaining close to half a stroke per round. Now, the short game has fallen off. That's why he isn't playing as well as he was during the fall. But now he gets to be in a team event. He gets to play with Alex Smalley, right? So perhaps Smalley can spark him in that aspect. In best ball, I would expect them to make a ton of birdies, go extremely low. Charlie Hoffman, similarly broken to a Matt Wallace. The shots gained metrics are absolutely atrocious. Losing off the tee, losing on approach. Around the green, he's gaining. Woohoo. It's the only category he's gaining in because he's also losing with the putter. So if Charlie Hoffman's lost, you don't want to be playing that group for Nick Watney. I mean, Nick Watney's probably even more lost than Charlie Hoffman is at this point. Actually, he's not. I mean, if you take a look at the shots gained metrics, he's pretty much better than him across the board except for in around the green. But he's still a dog shit player, right? It's Nick Watney. It's not 2015 Nick Watney anymore. We're talking 2022. Unfortunately for him, he's past his prime. Paul Barjon and Tom Hoge at $7,000. We talked about them as a core pick this week. Just ball striking specialist, right? We kind of highlighted this just a little bit ago. As a team, they're gaining close to a third of stroke per round off the tee, close to a quarter of a stroke per round on approach. Just that's what we're looking for in value picks, right? Guys that are going to do it with the ball striking and maybe catch that hot putter. And in these team play formats, you have a little bit of a higher opportunity to do so, particularly in best ball, right? You're going to have 2 chances to make birdies, particularly if both of these guys are putting it to 10, 15 feet on most of these easy holes. So hopefully they can make some putts. It's really going to come down to that for them. We'll catch up on chat down here. Chris Palmer says, I meant Smotherman as Hoagie as the last 2 guys in. Others would be Burns, Scheffler, Kirk, and Mitchell. Yeah, I would go with those 2 then. Those would be my last 2 guys in. The Buckley-Smalley group would kind of be the third group out. So, yeah, that's what I would go with there. Those 2 groups make a lot of sense for me. Moving on to the bottom of the 6K range, there's not going to be a ton of guys here I like. Patrick Rogers, Brandon Wu. I like Patrick Rogers' putting. I like the fact that he's relatively long off the tee, where Brandon Wu is relatively short off the tee. I like the fact that Brandon Wu is a relatively solid iron player, where Patrick Rogers kind of dog shit with his iron. So perhaps they can kind of fill each other's flaws, that type of thing. That could be a group to look out for as a sleeper pick. Peter Uihlein, Richie Rowensky, both solid iron players. It's about the only thing I can say about them that's a positive, though. Adam Longbow Hogue, I don't have in my player pool. I have a weird feeling they're going to be like chalk because not only have I heard multiple times on this chat now that they're really solid plays, that people like them, but I've seen them around the industry just like touted by pretty much everyone's kind of talked about this group. And I kind of get it, right? But let me look at their rank. They're number 58 in the field. I mean, I'd much rather go to this Chase Seifert, Lebiota group. I'd rather go to the Wierenski group even. I'd rather go to the Scott Piercy, Sean O'Hare group, believe it or not. Brandon Wu, Patrick Rogers, just I'm not sure I really get the love. I mean, they're like an average play for me. If you take a look at the shots gained metrics, the putting is really good for this group. That's surprising. Wow, yeah, okay. I guess I understand it, but that's also unsustainable because, again, that I'm surprised that they're gaining this many strokes of the putter because Adam Long historically a little bit of a better ball striker. Right? He's typically gaining a little bit more off the tee. He's still gaining in that category. It's usually a little bit more significant. Bo Hogue especially is not really known as being a solid putter, so that's a little bit surprising. Their shots gain profile there. That actually might be a little bit concerning, right? Because it's usually unsustainable when somebody's putting above their baseline, but we'll have to see. I don't hate the play. I don't love the play here. I just think they might be a little bit chalkier than I even expect. Chase Seifert and Hank Lebiota at $6,800. Hank Lebiota at least played well here in the past. You can see he finished 5th here in 2019. Now, that was with a completely different partner. When these 2 teamed up last year, they went out there and missed the cut. But Lebiota, a very hot putter, somebody who's extremely streaky. So if he can get that rolling, if Chase Seifert can do the same thing, he's also a relatively good hot putter. Who knows, right? They're a cheap play. Like I said before, you're going to have to be uncomfortable with some of your lineups to be able to make lineups this week. And they're one of the few filler picks down low I'll be going to. Arjun Atwal, don't love the play here, but love Lucas Herbert. So they might be a group I take a few shots on, mostly just for Lucas Herbert's upside. He's an insanely good player when he's firing on all cylinders. Lee Hodges and Vince Whaley, you have a relatively good skill set fit here. Lee Hodges is an absolute striper of a golf ball, relatively good off the tee with his distance, whereas Vince Whaley, a little bit more of a putting specialist, going to gain a ton of strokes to the field with the flat stick when he's playing his best. So if they can tune into that type of skill set, could perhaps play well. Not a huge fan of this Brandon Haye, Percy group, but they're solid ball strikers. So they might make their ways into like 3-4 of my lineups. Depends. I still haven't chosen they're going to play 110 lineups in the $5 GPP this week, or I'm going to play a 150 max of just the 50 cent, just punt this week. I haven't decided. I'm siding a little bit closer towards the 110 lineups. So if that's going to be the case, probably not going to play Brendan Hagee and Cameron Percy. But if I'm playing 150, they probably make the player pool. So I haven't decided on that yet. But yeah, that's the type of decision that'll depend on how many lineups I'm playing. Chad Ramey and Joshua Creel are really good friends from the Korn Ferry Tour. Both of them have won on the Korn Ferry Tour. We haven't really seen Creel break through yet. Of course, Chad Ramey won there at Corrales, but high upside plays you could go to. Curtis Thompson, Nick Hardy, they're both from South Florida. They have a lot of familiarity with each other. Both decent ball strikers too, relatively good with their long irons. Could be a sleeper team to look out for. And the last team I have down as a yes is Camilo Villegas and Kyle Stanley. Both solid ball strikers, solid approach players. But that's about all we can say about it because everyone else down low is it's dreadful, guys. I'm going to start to make fun of some of these teams down here because when we get past $6,400, it gets extremely ugly. I mean, we have Michael Kim playing in the field. Who the hell knows where that guy went? We have groups down here that are just absolutely embarrassing, especially down here at $6,000. I mean, Dolly Vanderwalt has yet to make a cut on tour at this point. The guy got his tour card back this year, but hasn't really done anything with it. We have groups like Jim Nous and Martin Trainer playing together. I don't think you need to waste your time on these plays. Like Robert Garrigus, Tommy Dean, they're not going to make the cut this week, right? And if they do, they're going to finish in 32nd place, right? It's not going to end up mattering in a DFS format. There's not any of these pure punt plays I don't even think you have to consider. The only ones that even half cross my mind, let's go into somebody like a David Skins and Austin Cook. Sorry, not David Skins and Austin Cook. Caleb Turan and David Skins. Turan really explosive off the tee. David Skins, hasn't really done anything yet on tour. He's very similar to some of these other guys who have just kind of been here on tour, haven't had any of those good finishes. Just Turan's really the guy I'd be trying to target there. Up here, we could go to somebody potentially like a Dylan Wu, the other Wu brother, and a Justin Lauer. But again, Justin Lauer is a pretty dreadful player, hasn't done shit since getting on tour. We already talked about the Hagee and Percy group. We already talked about Arjun Atwal and Lucas Herbert. Outside of that, all these other groups down as a no, I have no interest in. I mean, Novak and McGreevy, no thank you. Kevin Chappell, James Hahn, no thank you. Mark Hubbard, Ryan Brem, maybe, right? That's a group that I might put down as a blank. I know I mentioned them before, just because Ryan Brem won, just because he had that semblance of form of late. Mark Hubbard, he's a below average player on tour, but he's very consistently just a below average player on tour. They're not a group that really stands out to me. They're not going to be in my personal player pool. It's really ugly down low. You're just going to try and find any semblance of upside that you can. For me, with Creel and Ramey, we've seen them win in the past, right? They've played in some decent form of late, so there's that. Curtis Thompson's been making some cuts on tour. Now, Nick Hardy, not so much making the cuts, but I do like Curtis Thompson's upside there. It's really rough down low, guys. Just understand, usually we have a lot more plays down here marked as a yes. I'm just not going to be one of those weeks given the options that we have. Sam Ergel says, late to the stream, but looking forward to watching it back. Glad to have you, Sam. Glad to see that you're stopping on by. Catch Me If You Can says, who's your pick to finish last? Let's definitely touch on that right now. And Nick Mars says, 6 of 6 seems extremely hard this week. And you would be correct because, first off, there's a lower percentage of the field that should make the 6 of 6 this week because this is the one thing people don't consider when it's the top 33 of 80 that end up making the cut. There's a lot less ties when it's only 33 people making the cut. Or usually there's a lot less ties. Sometimes there'll be a ton of teams that end up tying, but last year exactly 33 teams ended up making the cut. So it should be relatively hard to make the cut and get 6 of 6 this week, unless all the chalk ends up hitting. But let's talk about who I expect to finish last. So let's go down to the bottom. If I were betting on who I expected to finish last, it would be Bill and Jay Haas. Jay Haas, we haven't seen in literally God knows how long. He's losing over a stroke per round off the tee. He hits it like 250. I mean, when they have to play his tee shots and alternate shot, God help them. They're going to have a hard time reaching some of these par fours. So they would be my pick to finish last. Bill has to play with his brother, and his brother, unfortunately, is dog shit right now. So that's probably not going to go all too well for him. All right, let me bring up DraftKings. We'll talk about making a few lineups together, and then we'll hop on out of here. If there's any players that I didn't touch on that you want me to go back and touch on, just make sure to go ahead and let me know down below, and I will do that before we hop on out of here as well. All righty. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get into the strategy. So 1 second here. Nick says, are you going to do showdown live streams? Absolutely. I don't do a showdown live stream for round one. That's just personal preference for me. I mean, first off, if I'm entering players in my 4-round stuff, probably playing them in my showdown lineups for round one. And I don't play showdown for round one. I don't know what it is. It's just not really entertaining to me. Yeah, I feel like a lot of other people don't play showdown in round one. It's kind of weird, but if you're watching this on replay or watching this live right now and you play a ton of showdown in round one, go ahead and let me know and let me know why you play showdown round one. Because for me, like if I already have my sweat in, right, and I already have my guys in my 4-round stuff, I don't really feel a need to go out there and play a showdown for round one. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like I already have my sweat in for that day. Whereas rounds 2, 3, and 4, even though we have our 4-round stuff, we can kind of separate them a little bit easier. I don't know what it is. Let me know down below if you're playing showdown for round one, though. A little bit of an interesting case study. Let's start talking about strategy. So we're going to do a GPP lineup together first. So really the whole point of this is just to give you my rationale and some of the thought process I put into making these lineups. So this may or may not be a lineup I end up entering this week. A lot of my lineups just go through a lineup generator. I end up just uploading a CSV from there. So it may or may not end up making the actual pool. But if I was making a lineup by hand, this is what I would be thinking. So let's go ahead. This is a very large field contest. We want to make sure we're fading some of the chalk, being a little bit cognizant about the total ownership of our lineup. And for starting our lineups, I wouldn't mind at all starting with the Ryan Palmer, Scotty Scheffler group. They're at $9,700 because a lot of the value down low is not really people that I'm looking to play. By starting a little bit lower, we're not gonna have to dive as deep into that 6K range. So I like using him at $9,700 as a second man in. You can go to this Taylor Gooch Max Homer group. They're again one of my picks to win this week. I think they're underrated on DFS and in the outright betting markets. So let's go ahead and put them in there. With Ryan Palmer, Scheffler, they're going to be relatively chalky, but they're not going to be mega chalk on the slate. Taylor Gooch and Max Homa should be right around average in terms of their ownership. So we are not too chalky at this point. We don't have to be too contrarian at this point. So we're here in the 8K range. We can take somebody towards the top. We could try and fit in a Will Zalatoris and Riley. Let's see what that puts us in terms of average salary. $7,400. You could probably make that work. So let's go with that. Towards the bottom of the 8K range, I love this Chris Kirk, Brendan Todd group. That puts us at $7,000, which actually might be a little bit too aggressive. So let's go a little bit further down. You can see there's a question about Robert McIntyre. Absolutely love that group this week. I think that the combination of Laird's approach play with Robert McIntyre's short game and putting could be a relatively good fit there. We could use them in this lineup. So I know I had them down as a blank. They're probably not my favorite option, especially if you're playing like a 2 to 3 max or a single entry type of GPP. But guys that I would at least consider. I absolutely love this Mitchell and Snedeker group that we talked about. The complementary skill set between the bomber and Mitchell and the short game plotter and somebody like a Brant Snedeker. And they also put us at $7,200. So it's definitely doable there. We'll go down to the middle of the 7K range, try and take a group towards $7,500, maybe even $7,400. We can go to this Neesmith Moore group. Talked about them quite a bit this week. We could try to go to $7,500. Let's see what that looks like taking somebody like a Thigala and Hostler. That puts us at 69. Ooh, scratchy throat there. Sorry about that, guys. Let's go to 6,900. We could go to a Patrick Rogers and Woo. I mean, I don't love these plays, right? That's like I was saying before. Like these are just like kind of like fill-in plays. I mean, even Wierenski and Uline. So let's take a look at what the $7,400 lineup looks like. So we go ahead and put Neesmith and Moore in there instead and go down to $7,000. At $7,000, we could take the Tom Hoagie Barjon group, or we could go to Buckley Smalley. See, I like those lineups a lot more. So I'd be a lot more willing to go to this lineup. So you can see the issues of going down to the 6K range. It just gets really hairy really fast. So this would be solid for a 2 to 3 max, would also be a solid lineup for a single entry GPP or a large field GPP. You're dealing with not chalky plays across the board, relatively average ownership across the board. I would expect guys like Tom Hoagie Barjon to be sub 10% ownership. More Neesmith, same type of story. Keith Mitchell, Snedeker might be right around 10% owned. Obviously on my spreadsheet, you can get the most accurate numbers there. But this lineup has some guys that are going to get some ownership, but no real chalk. So it should be contrarian enough for these large field tournaments. If you want to make sure that you're contrarian, like you really want to make sure that this lineup has no chance of being duplicated, maybe you're in the super large field GPP, the $71,000 sorry, no, 71,000 entry $5 contest. Just leave a few thousand on the table, right? Maybe go down to a McDowell Power. You can maybe spend up from Neesmith and take $7,500 Thigala like you wanted to before. And that way you have $200 on the table. You're able to take Thigala like you wanted to before. And I know rather than having the Zalatoris Riley group, you had to spend down a little bit to be a little bit contrarian, right? So if you wanted to be a little bit more careful about the ownership, that's how you could go about executing that type of lineup. Let's now go over to the cash build. So of course in cash, double ups, head-to-heads, all that sort of fun stuff. Much more different mindset. And these type of lineups, I'm trying to be as balanced as humanly possible. So you could start with $9,700 Ryan Palmer, or it could start even lower. You could start with a Tommy Fleetwood and Garcia, who again have had a ton of success in team formats together. So you could start there. You could go down a little bit further, take Terrell Haddon, Dylan Willett. They've had a ton of success together. They should be a relatively consistent group this week. Now towards the bottom, Grayson Sig and Sepp Straka. Again, I expect them to be a relatively consistent group. Moving down a little bit further on the board, I think Charles Schwartzel and Bazanhu, they should be a relatively consistent group here. We can live right around $8,000. So we can go up and take a Chris Kirk, who's playing with Brendan Todd. And at $7,400, Neesmith is the perfect last man in. So this is the type of lineup I'd be going for in cash. The cheapest player is $7,400. So obviously a much different build than what we had elsewhere, where the cheapest was $7,000. We weren't able to take nearly as many of these guys in the 8K range. And all of these groups have relatively solid players on both sides, right? You know, you have Sig and Straka, right? Haddon and Willett, both well above average players in this field. Fleetwood and Garcia. There's no real stinkers here. I mean, the lowest quality player is Taylor Moore. And Taylor Moore made a ton of cuts on the Korn Ferry Tour. The guy was like the most consistent player that we had. So this is certainly a lineup that I'd be looking for in cash. Of course, no salary left on the table. There's no reason to do so in those type of contests. And ownership, this isn't even that chalky of a lineup, right? A lot of the ownership is going to these guys that are $10,000 plus. And I think in cash, people are going to try and get one of these guys into their lineups. But then that means that you have to spend into this bottom of the 7K range or even into the 6K range, which for cash, I am not comfortable doing. There's nobody in this 6K range that I can say, yeah, I definitely think they go out there and make the cut. There's nobody I can say that about. It's not even close. All of them, it's like, who knows at this point? I mean, I hope they make the cut. They're just low quality players, right? It's hard to really have conviction about any of these groups. So that's what I would be doing in cash. I wouldn't be as aggressive as you might want to be in some of these other slates. We'll catch up on the questions down here below. Nick Mars says, me either, but I do first round leader. Yeah, it makes sense. For first round leader, target guys that are teeing off early, particularly tomorrow with how wet the conditions should be. Robert says, I'm the same, never play showdown round one. So that's good to know. It's rough, right? Because if you're already playing 4-round stuff, you're spending all that time to make your lineups. Then you have to crunch a whole nother set of 150 lineups. It's just a lot of work, right? Particularly when you're spending a couple hours on it like I am with my lineups. And Robert says, what did you project Scheffler's team? It was really low the last time I saw. So let me go ahead and check. And yeah, I'm not looking at the numbers too much this week. I haven't projected for 67.77 right now. But like I said, I'm not looking into the numbers too much, right? It's much more important that players have that familiarity with the other player. And projecting points when it comes to fantasy points is a really tough ask. That's the one thing that I usually tell people with the categories is there's one category that I kind of ignore with my analysis is projected points, because when I'm building lineups, I'm not looking at a player's projected points and be like, oh, I want them in more of my lineups because my projected points is there. It's more of the game theory aspect, right? More of the skill set fit, right? I always talk about skill set fit because in my opinion, that's the biggest edge that we have in golf is understanding a player's skill set and understanding the skill set that plays well at a specific venue. Because first off, a lot of the casuals don't know these players' skill sets, right? They don't understand what players are good at. And second of all, they don't understand what plays well at these golf courses. So if you know both of those things and you can marry them together, that's what I'm looking at. And that's what I'm looking at with that group. So I wouldn't look into the numbers too much with that, especially this week, right? In other weeks where it's stroke play, it's much better, or it's much easier for us to project points on that because I do it week in and week out. For this team play format, I'll admit, right? That's kind of why I meant the numbers before. I don't want to say they're useless, but they're a lot less useful this week, right? Because there's variance, right? Because this is a different format, right? We're not making projections for team play every single week. So that's the one thing I'll say about it. Nick Mars says, my first time doing DFS for a team event. Can't wait to see your strategy for alternate shot versus 4-ball. Yeah, when we talk about showdown, For tomorrow, it will be interesting. It's a lot more about skill set fit than it is about form. That guys could go out there and not play well there in round one, but if they have that skill set fit I'm looking for, would love them for round two. So definitely a sharp take there, Nick. For if I 4-round stuff, you can say I'm kind of catering it towards alternate shot because pretty much any of these groups can go low on best ball, right? These are PGA Tour professionals. So if they get that hot putter going, they're going to shoot 7 or 8 under par tomorrow in a best ball format. Whereas an alternate shot, it's going to cause some of these groups trouble. Like you're going to see groups shoot 4 or 5 over par an alternate shot. So yeah, Nick, can't wait to talk about it. That'll certainly be a talking point for the stream tomorrow. And Robert says, sorry, I meant ownership projection. What is their ownership projection? Let me get it back to you. Let me check. 21.4% right now. So the really low ownership number you saw might have been Billy Horschel and Sam Burns that I have at 12.5%. So that's obviously very intriguing with Billy Horschel and Sam Burns. They're one of the lower owned plays on the slate, but right around 20% for a Scotty Scheffler. So, it's not low, it's not high, right? It's one of those groups up top. They're going to get plenty of steam, that 15 to 25% range, pretty much no matter who they are. It's doable, right? Play them in 40, 50% of your lineups and you should be good to go. But that's all I've got for you guys. I appreciate you guys stopping by. If you're watching this on replay and you have a question, do not be shy at all to go ahead and fire it down below. Make sure you like the live stream if you haven't already. Helps me with growing the channel. Also gets this out to a few more people, so I'd appreciate that. If you haven't already subscribed, also make sure you go ahead and do that, right? Don't want to miss any of this showdown content coming out. We're going to be going live right around 7:30, 8 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. I'll also be doing that on Friday and Saturday night, also for rounds 3 and 4. So make sure to look forward to that. I appreciate you guys again. Best of luck with all of your bets, all of your DFS lineups. If you're asking about my outright betting card, I have no bets placed as of right now, but the only bet I'm considering placing is an outright on Max Homa and Taylor Gooch. The number, I'm trying to shop it right now. I don't have access to a very good number, but there are really solid numbers out there in Max Homa and Taylor Gooch. So I'm trying to bet that via proxy, which I didn't say that. But yes, I'm trying to bet it via proxy. So we'll have to see on that. Again, best of luck, guys, and I'll talk to you guys next time.